something to be said about that he is in a comfortable position to give what is going to be a long message. But the language in these verses is very deliberate. And I told you that what Matthew does in his gospel is proclaim Jesus as what? King, right? As king. So listen to Psalm 80, verse 1 through 2. It says this, "Give ear, O shepherd of Israel." Who is Israel's shepherd? Christ. "Give ear, O shepherd of Israel, you who lead Joseph like a flock, you who are enthroned upon the cherubim, shine forth. Before Ephraim and Benjamin, Manasseh, stir up your might and come to save us." Hebrews 1:3 tells us that Jesus is now seated at the right hand of majesty. He is sitting down. Has anybody in here ever studied the tabernacle? There is only one piece of furniture in the entire design of the tabernacle that is designed for sitting, and it is the mercy seat, the very throne of God. And so when we see Jesus go up on a mountain and sit down, he is being portrayed for us as the king who is taking his seat to deliver his manifesto for the kingdom. Next, we need to ask, why is Jesus on a mountainside? Now, if you are familiar at all with the book of Matthew, you know that Matthew is rather fond of telling us stories about Jesus on mountainsides. So if you go to Matthew 17, you would see the story of the Transfiguration. Do you remember that? Where the three go up with him and they're on top of a mountain and he is revealed to them as God in the flesh. And then in Matthew 24, just 7 chapters ahead of that, we see Jesus giving the Olivet Discourse, where he is again on a mountaintop. And then in Matthew 28, just 4 chapters after that, he will give the Great Commission from a mountaintop. So what's going on? Why is Matthew, who is so concerned with pointing his readers back to the Old Testament to convince them that Jesus is the one who he says he is, that he is the Messiah, why does he keep giving us scenes where Jesus is on a mountaintop? You may know that in Luke, we hear a similar version of this sermon given, and it's not called the Sermon on the Mount, it's called the Sermon on the Plain. So Matthew very deliberately here is giving us a time when Jesus has given this message, and he's given it from a mountaintop. And in order to answer that question, we have to go back to Exodus chapter 19. So if you will turn there with me. Exodus chapter 19. If you know anything about the book of Exodus, you know right about where we are, because most of us don't know a whole lot about Exodus, but we know that in Exodus chapter 20, what happens? The 10 Commandments are given. That's right. And so the 10 Commandments are not given until after the nation of Israel has been ransomed out of captivity from Egypt, and they go out into the desert and they go to Mount Sinai as they had been told that they would do. And so when we see the scene that we're about to read, they are at the foot of Mount Sinai waiting for what is going to happen next. So in chapter 19 of Exodus, starting in verse 9, I just want to read this, and you can read along with me, and I want you to picture in your mind what the Israelites must have been thinking and feeling as this is happening. So starting in verse 9, it says, "And the Lord said to Moses, Behold, I am coming to you in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak with you, and may also believe you forever." When Moses told the words of the people to the Lord said to Moses, "Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their garments and be ready for the third day. For on the third day the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people, and you shall set limits for the people all around, saying, Take care not to go up into the mountain or touch the edge of it. Whoever touches the mountain shall be put to death. No hand shall touch him, but he shall be stoned or shot. Whether beast or man, he shall not live. When the trumpet sounds a long blast, they shall come up on the mountain." So Moses went down from the mountain to the people and consecrated the people, and they washed their garments. And he said to the people, "Be ready for the third day. Do not go near a woman." Don't get your feelings hurt. It's just about staying ceremonially clean. Verse 16, "On the morning of the third day, there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud on the mountain." The original translation says, "And a glorious heavy was on the mountain." So it's like, he can't even describe it. He's going to talk about a trumpet in a minute. It just means there were these loud sounds and he didn't have any other word for it, okay? And so it says a very loud trumpet blast so that all the people in the camp trembled. Verse 17, "Then Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God, and they took their stand at the foot of the mountain." So they sound like they're just hanging out, having a good time. They're terrified, okay? They're like standing their ground, hoping that they will not just totally cower before this demonstration. Verse 18, now Mount Sinai was wrapped in smoke because the Lord had descended on it in fire. The smoke of it went up like the smoke of a kiln, and the whole mountain trembled greatly. And as the sound of the trumpet grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him in thunder. The Lord came down on Mount Sinai to the top of the mountain, and the Lord called Moses to the top of the mountain, and Moses went up. And then we get more warnings about don't touch the mountain or you will die. Don't touch the mountain or you will die. And then out of this, the law is given. The 10 Commandments are given. And the people celebrate? Let's see what happens next. Look in verse 18 of chapter 20. Immediately following the giving of the 10 Commandments, this is their response. Verse 18. Now when all the people saw the thunder and the flashes of lightning and the sound of the trumpet and the mountain smoking, the people were afraid and trembled, and they stood far off and said to Moses, you speak to us and we will listen, but do not let God speak to us lest we die. Moses said to the people, do not fear, for God has come to test you, that the fear of him may be before you, that you may not sin. The people stood far off, while Moses drew near to the thick darkness where God was. Do you know why this is a significant scene for us as we begin our study of the Sermon on the Mount? Because this is the last time in Scripture that God spoke to his people from a mountain. And what was it like? We see God's thundering voice descending on Mount Sinai, the holy mountain. Think of the contrast in Matthew chapter 5. Jesus on a mountain that we don't even know the name of. We don't even know really where it is. Why? Because in the new kingdom of heaven, the true worshipers will not go to a certain mountain. They will worship in spirit and in truth. And so there is no name even given to the spot. So we see Mount Sinai, the holy mountain, wrapped in smoke, and we see God coming down. And in Matthew chapter 5, we see an unnamed mountain and God who goes up. There are thunder and lightning and peals and trumpets in Exodus chapter 19. And in Matthew chapter 5, we see God speak not in thunder and lightning, but in a still small voice. In Exodus, the people stay at a distance and they cower and they fear that they will die. But in the new kingdom of heaven, the people draw near. And in both Exodus and in the Sermon on the Mount, the law will be given. But we will see the law given by Jesus in such a full and deep and rich and beautiful way as the law that gives freedom, the law of liberty, as James would say. So I think what we have to remember as we embark on a study of the Sermon on the Mount is to savor the truth of what it means when the angel says to Mary, you will call his name Emmanuel, which means God with us. They draw near and they sit at his feet. Isaiah 2 verse 3 says this, come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, that he may teach us his ways and that we may walk in his paths. And here we see this prophecy being fulfilled as Jesus goes up on a mountain and takes his seat and invites those who are following him to come near. How beautiful on the mountains are the feet of him who brings good news. The Sermon on the Mount will be good news for us. Over the next 9 weeks, it will be good news.